Croeso, hello, welcome to RobRyanRed, the Wrexham podcast, brought to you in association with Red 10 People Development. On today's show, we'll look back at the posh nosh over the weekend. We'll take a look back on transfer deadline day and look ahead to Derby Day this weekend.
RobRyanRed.
Now, Nath, it's a bumper pack show. I think just before we get started today, recording on Wednesday, it was Arthur Massey's funeral today. Wrexham legend passed away at 100 years old. Just wanted to pass on our condolences really to Arthur, who's a Wrexham legend. I think everyone will have seen that in the documentary. You will have met him, lots of you listening in real life at matches as well. You know, he is just someone in the very fabric of the football club. So we just wanted to put on record our condolences and our thoughts with him and his family and his loved ones at this moment in time. Moving on to the football though, Nath. Wrexham away, Town away. I like it, you like it, we all like it. We weren't very positive. That's a running sort of theme on this podcast headed into Peterborough at the weekend. I think for good reason though. It wasn't just being, negative for negative sake, but my words. Exceeding expectations in League One. Could we do it again?
I came away from that thinking absolutely, and it was very funny that a few people near where I was with James Kelly were talking about, I heard you on the podcast and you know it's so early. They were like you, Rich. They were like, it's way too early in the season to be saying Wrexham are in the mix for the top two, and by the end they were like, hey, maybe, who knows, stranger things have happened, right? So it was, you know what, I don't think Peterborough are that bad. They're not a bad team. I think we just made them look incredibly ordinary, which is testament to us. I think you can praise us without necessarily slamming Peterborough. They didn't have a shot on target. They had all of the ball. And I know some of their fans were saying that Wrexham were rubbish and they couldn't watch that style of football every week. I'm not quite sure what they were watching. It was very entertaining for my part. George Dobson, again, brilliant. Andy Cannon was my man of the match before he went off. Barney was, again, fabulous. And you look to the bench and you see Paul Mullin and Stephen Fletcher coming on and you think, the depth is just insane. So, we're starting this podcast off on a much brighter note than your kind of spicy noodle fiasco last week. But yes, Posh was very, very fun. And what I would say, very old school throwback ground. I enjoyed it. Wooden seats that kind of really faded and potentially, I text you and I even tweeted it out, potentially the best away end I've ever been in with Wrexham. The drummer, whether it was Manny or somebody else, I've seen mixed reports. I think it was Manny, but if it wasn't, I do apologise. Drummer was absolutely spectacular. It's 20 minutes before kickoff, going at it full tilt and still going, right the way through the entire game. It was an atmosphere that even Peterborough fans on the way out, when we were all walking back to the station, said, fair play. That is one of the best noises I've heard from an away end in years.
Yeah, what was it when we played Coventry away? Mark Robinson said it was the loudest away end he'd ever heard at Coventry. It's probably similar at Peterborough as well, and just feels great to be back playing these sort of teams again, doesn't it? I mean, yeah, we've not been blessed with many good away days following Wrexham in our sort of canon of being certainly sort of adult Wrexham fans. Mostly spent in non-league. Over half our life we've been a non-league football club, so being back where we are now is just fantastic. Won't be lost on us. We had an email this week, Nate, from Cultured Punk, who was asking what the chant was going off in the away end. That was Town away, I like it. Is that still ringing in your ears?
It went on for about 20 minutes. It was all that was sang for. Look, you're 2-0 up in a game that I felt was a real marker. We said before that if you can go there and get a result, that was a real statement result. And if Wrexham can back it up with a win against Shrewsbury, they can finish the weekend top of the league. And I get it's only 5 games in, but it's still, I'd much rather be top of the league than wherever Bolton are at. Bottom 5, bottom 4. Early days, but I know where I'd rather be after 5 games. And so it was a real marker. But yeah, Town away, I like it to the tune of That's the Way I Like It. I don't even know the band. Was it K Cool? And I don't know what the band is. That's bad. I'm not a big music nerd. So Don't know the band, unfortunately. But yeah, Town Away, I like it for about 20 minutes straight. Peterborough fans were absolutely sick to death of it. Some young lads that were just opposite.
Casey and the Sunshine Band.
Casey and the Sunshine Band were flicking lots and lots of obscenities our way, which made it even sweeter. Just
V
one of
for
them,
victory, was it?
V for victory, and I think they were holding up one particular finger to say that they only need maybe one goal to get back in the game. I don't know what they were trying to signify, but they weren't too happy with us singing Town Away, I Like It. And yeah, it was just a great day. It was just one of them days where
sun shining. Not often in the UK you can go to a football match and wear just a shirt, is it? Just your actual football shirt. You're always usually layered up. And quickly, it's going to be winter again before we know it. It just felt real good vibes.
Yes, great vibes. And I would say, shout out to my sister. I'm sure she listens to the podcast. I hope she does anyway, because she did come through and get Oasis tickets. So when I got that message that she'd got the Oasis tickets, I know you were struggling for a while with our good friend Ticketmaster. I know you were successful as well. So getting the ticket and then the game, Jack Marriott got the first goal. Max got the second. Max is potentially one of the best players in League One right now. Great, immaculate vibes, Rich. Immaculate vibes. And shout out as well to the Wonky Donkey pub. The Wonky Donkey Micro Pub, Wrexham Lager on draft. So
proof again, like I said last week, it is easier to get Oasis tickets than Birmingham away tickets, which we'll get onto later. They go on sale, probably on sale already. They go on sale Thursday morning in the UK. So if you're not, you might be listening to this and beforehand, you might have listened afterwards, maybe to console yourself or to celebrate getting those tickets to St Andrews. I'll be swapping my Oasis tickets for an away end one if things go not according to plan for me. But yeah, mentioned some stand-up players there, Nath. I mean, for me, when you said Andy Cann man of the match, for me it was Barney. I think what he did in both boxes was fantastic, particularly in the second half. There was that moment where he won the ball, he tackled defender so cleanly that he won a goal kick from it. And then he should have had an assist when he put the ball on the plate for Paul Mullin, who a little rusty, as we saw last season when he came back from his lung issue. He took a few weeks to really sort of settle in, and I think that's the same with Paul now. And obviously, you can't just put him in the lineup because he doesn't justify a start ahead of Marriott. So who else has stood up for you then? Because Max Cleworth is, as we'll get onto it, the highest scoring, I think, League One defender in fantasy football. You've got Dobson, who just does all the dirty work, runs and runs and runs. Andy Cannon earned his place back in the squad again. He deserves to be playing every single week. And Marriott, he's scoring goals. What more can you ask?
Where do I start with any of those then? What I'll say, George Dobson, there was a moment against Peterborough where he was probably like 70-30 in favour of the Peterborough player. Ball up in the air. Marriott's a fair way back to get it. Just goes in full speed, absolutely clatters into the man, but wins the header. But just follows through, gets absolutely pummeled by the Peterborough player. Shrugs it off, gets up and carries on. Huge, obviously, you can imagine, huge roar from the away end when you see that kind of tenacity and that kind of grit and bite that you get in those kind of players. I would argue that I think George Dobson has been the best midfielder in League One so far this season. You could definitely make the case. I know there have been other players. I'm sure Stockport fans would point to Louis Barry in attack, and maybe we could look at Max defensively. But in midfield, I think there's been few players that have hit the heights of George Dobson, and I see Charlton fans time and again ruining the fact that they didn't manage to keep him, they didn't manage to sell him on their vision, because they have their own ambitions of going up this season. But George Dobson, he offers you great vision in terms of his passing. I mean, the weight of touch for Marriott's goal is just sublime, and the run he makes that opens up the space, I think, is being overlooked as well. It's not just the touch he makes to feed Marriott in, and obviously it's a finish with a little bit of fortune, but you've got to be in those positions to score. But Dobson, there's so much more to his game than, obviously everyone knows I was a super fan of Luke Young, but he's got a bit of that, but he's got a bit of Andy Cannon. He's got a bit of everything about him. He's like this really all-round midfielder that reads the game incredibly well. He knows when to step in and when to kind of drop off. His passing is very, very good, very clean. And while there are moments where he might give it away, he's so quick to chase it back, to chase it down. He's never really... I never look at him and think, wow, he looks tired or wow, he looks lethargic. He just is everywhere all the time. And his heat map must look incredible. I haven't seen it, but it just must be bright red spots all over the place because he is everywhere.
Yeah, it must look like he's got some sort of infection. It's just bright red. He's one of those players who, first of all, you'd say already would maybe say he's going to be like player of the season, fans player of the season, something for him and Max will be the early contenders. I think just the way Dobson plays, fans are going to absolutely love it. They already do. Probably works against him, doesn't it? That we live in this age of, we mentioned Peterborough fans getting a bit giddy over their possession at the weekend. I mean, there is one stat that matters. You scored 0 goals, mate. Dobson, he's got 1 assist, no goals this season. Some fans will be like, well, he's crap, isn't he? Because where's the goals and assists? He's about so much more than that. And it's so easy to stereotype a player like him as just being legs, just being someone who harasses opponents, breaks at play. Like you said, he's got so much more to his game. He's so good on the ball. He's really clever. He reads the game so well. And yeah, he's a real gem. I'm delighted. And there's an argument as well. We tweeted out Joel's piece today that he's put on RobRyanRed.com. It's about Wrexham's transfer window, sort of ranked. He's graded it, looked at the best signing, which of course is Arthur Okonkwo, because you can't really argue over that. And then there's the other category for who's the best signing that's not Okonkwo. And it probably, so far you say, would be Dobson, because he just fits seamlessly into that midfield. And it's crazy that there was such a debate, wasn't there, about the midfield, and now it looks so settled. And shout out as well to Elliot Lee, who we were making the case for. I think lots of fans were that he didn't quite have the same impact in away games, but this is one of his very best away performances, I thought.
Yeah, he really, and again, I don't necessarily think it was spectacular on the ball, but what really impressed me about Elliot's performance was his out of possession work. Sorry, the energy he put into chasing down, closing down. He delivers that ball into Dobson, and which is a great pass that Dobson then lays off for Marriott, and that is key to getting us on the way for the first goal. But just his energy, his effort, I thought he really bought in. And that's not to suggest he hasn't previously, but he just found a gear that we really needed him to find. And I know Parky was talking about how he thought Rathbone was outstanding when he came on, and I maybe didn't quite see it that same way. But I think right now you cannot change Lee, Cannon and Dobson. We know Evans has been carrying an injury, but he wouldn't usurp Dobson for me right now. I wouldn't put Rathbone in ahead of Cannon, and you're not going to drop Elliot Lee. So, a good dilemma to have, great depth pieces, but I think the starters that have got the shirts right now are making it very, very, very tricky to take it off them.
Yeah, like I said, we're going to preview the Salford game as well right at the end of the podcast. That is going to be fascinating next week in the Bristol Street Motors, because that could be wholesale changes. That will be a chance for, it's not even, in years gone by, without being too rude, it was the likes of, you'd have Waters and Bickerstaff up front. Now it's going to be Mullin and Faal, perhaps. It could be George Evans in midfield trying to earn a place. It is going to be really fascinating to see how we approach that tournament. Yeah, anyone else you want to reflect on from Peterborough before we move on?
Tom O'Connor, actually, because I feel like we were talking about, and people might have seen this if they follow us on Instagram, RobRyanRed, quick plug for the Instagram page.
It really is easy to find us on socials, isn't it?
It's super easy. But the Instagram page, I'm putting a lot of clips on there, and there's one clip where you and I were talking about Ollie Palmer. Is he one of Wrexham's most underrated players? And I did think he was really effective, did a lot of dirty work again, was having his shirt pulled left and right. I don't think he could argue about the booking he got. Neither Mullin. I think both of those were yellow cards, and neither of those could argue. But the player I wanted to pick out was Tom O'Connor, because I just felt, and I do feel that he's slightly overlooked in that left centre-back role. I know it's not the most glamorous position. Max is taking all the headlines defensively, but Tom O'Connor is such a good footballer. He is really, really good. He's so calm in possession. He doesn't get panicked by. I have flashbacks of when we went to Salford away, Rich, and it was Tunnicliffe and Hayden as the kind of left and right centre back. And anyone who was at that game or watched that game, one of the main takeaways was that we were playing this game of hot potato. As soon as the ball got to the feet of the back three, it was immediately going long again, and then it was coming straight back, and we ended up losing that game and playing really poorly. O'Connor's just so composed, and I think he's got a great relationship with McLean on that left side, and I think Max has got a great relationship with Barney, and it shows you the value of consistency. You aren't going to make partnerships and a telepathy and an understanding overnight, and so that's why kind of a settled back five is so important, not just for Arthur, but for O'Connor, for McLean, for Barney, for Max. It's no coincidence to me that those specific players are elevating each other's games. And O'Connor in particular, I think, is going under the radar. You can make the case for Ollie, no doubt, if you think he's the most underrated. But, the only player that got into the sofa score or whatever it is, team of the week, was Tom O'Connor. Deservedly so. I thought he was very, very good in shutting down Peterborough. Kwame Poku down that right side. What they knocking back bids of 4 million, Peterborough. He got no change out of McLean. He got no change out of Tom O'Connor. And, that was a team effort. But yeah, Tom O'Connor was the player I wanted to give a shout out to this week.
I think there's also a good point there in terms of, because the weekend brought in under fresh scrutiny the Wrexham style of play. And, there's a Peterborough fan saying, I'd hate to watch winning football every week. But a key point of it is we might play this sort of really, really quick transition football. I think we've averaged the lowest percentage of possession out of every League One team so far this season. It's around 33-34%. We are the lowest in the whole division. But it is about what you do with the ball, and it's not a case anymore that it is hoofball. We very rarely lump it long from the back. We actually break the lines and play it out really neatly. We just do it less frequently than some other teams do. But we just have maybe quality over quantity of chances in that regard, in the way that we build up our play. The centre-backs are just so clever with their passing, and the key part of that, like you mentioned, is that you've got Max and Tom in those two wider centre-back roles, and they're so comfortable either taking the ball out themselves, playing the ball to a central midfielder, making them run themselves, sort of overlapping centre-backs, or they'll play it to the wing-back and make space themselves. So I just feel it is just the laziest stereotype to say Wrexham just play hoofball. We get the ball from back to front really quick, but we're not hoofing it. We're playing it really nicely, intricately, and playing out from the back. It's just wrong.
Right, Rich. So before we recorded last time, it was looking ahead to deadline day. We were thinking we did sort of suggest that Billy Waters would be going. He's left on loan until January to Halifax. Jake Bickerstaff has dropped down to the National League with Altrincham, so gone from one Phil Parkinson to another. He's on loan until January with Altrincham. And Sam Dolby, perhaps that one was slightly more surprising in terms of the exits, Rich. I know we were thinking he could go, but with an extra spot available, we've only filled 21 of our 22. Maybe didn't need to, but season-long loan to Dundee United, playing with a certain Louis Moult. So Wrexham heritage up in Scotland for Louis Moult and Sam Dolby, both coming off the bench in the most recent game. What were your thoughts on the exits?
I thought that they did make sense, given that we brought an extra body in. I'm surprised we got all three of them out the door, to be honest. I think that's very, very productive from Wrexham's point of view. I wasn't expecting them to get rid of them all, really. And, again, throwing forward to that Bristol Street Motors game, you think, they could have had opportunities in that, but it would have been few and far between. I think of them all, Dolby is the most interesting one, because Bickerstaff, I think he's a very good talent. I think harshly, though, he's not going to be good enough for Wrexham's level. He wasn't good enough in League 2 at Accrington. He won't be good enough for us in League 1 just yet. If we then progress up to the Championship, which could happen, he's going to be quite far behind there. So interesting to see him at Altrincham. Waters, we know why we signed him. It was cover for Paul Mullen when we were trying to get out of the National League. We gave him too long a deal. It should have been loan with an obligation to buy, or it should have been a 1.5-year contract. It should have been much shorter than it was, but that's done now. Waters is effectively not going to be a Wrexham player, when his contract does eventually come to an end. I don't think that's any surprise. Dolby. Phil Parkinson loves Sam Dolby. He thinks he's one of the most intelligent football players we've got. He just maybe lacks confidence. Going off now to Scotland gives him the opportunity to build that confidence, get goals under his belt, and who knows? I know it sounds ludicrous, but if Stephen Fletcher was good enough I know he's much more experienced and he brings a completely different skill set, but he's proven that maybe that sometimes the jump from Scottish football to League One, you can be effective. So if Dolby went to Scotland, bagged loads of goals in, really did get confidence, and, he's still so young and raw as a player anyway, he's probably not played enough football as he should have done at this time in his career, just because he was on the periphery and then he moved to us and he was sort of down the pecking order. He's not had consistent football. There's a real player there still, I think. Maybe not Wrexham quality, but I think you've got a League One, League Two striker there in Sam Dolby. And, could be a Scottish Premier League striker. So I think it's a really good move for him, for all parties. I still think he'd really have to do exceptionally well to come back to Wrexham and force his way into the team. But if you're looking already ahead to next summer, when you could be losing Fletcher, you could be losing Palmer, there's no maybe question why Dolby could return and be third choice as that sort of target man striker again.
I mean, he is on an expiring deal, so essentially he'll be on loan until his Wrexham contract expires, which is very reminiscent of Jake Hyde. Jordan Davis in a similar situation. I know he's injured now, unfortunately, 3 months sidelined, which is a real shame for him and Grimsby. But again, there's a lot of players that are in contract years that need to do well to get a contract either with us or elsewhere. You're looking at Jack Marriott's in a contract year. He needs to really play well, and players typically elevate their level. But on Sam Dolby, there's a lot of his game that I like, and I know it's easy to say and we bring it up all the time, but let's not underestimate the importance of some of his goals, particularly that one at Aldershot in trying to get us out the National League. I just think he's not a kind of striker that is a ruthless finisher. He needs to be alongside a finishing type because he's got so much to his game. I think his link-up's really nice. He will score some goals, but I think, could he do this double act with Louis Moult? I'm not sure who else Dundee United have got, but I just think if Dundee United fans are expecting this 15, 20 goal a season striker with Sam Dolby playing every game, I don't think he is that. And I think that's okay. I think he can offer you a lot in terms of
he's a facilitator, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a facilitating type, and that's okay if you're casting him as that. But if you're casting him as, all right, he's going to be our sort of goal scoring saviour up front, I think you're setting him up to fail, really. Which I don't know. Is that a cop-out excuse for a striker? Because I know strikers, that your job is to score goals. I just don't think that suits his skill set so much, which sounds a bit of an oxymoron.
No, not really, because again, we always make reference to Ollie Palmer's arrival and how he just made Wrexham click so much better as a team. Under Parky, the first 6 months, it's easy to forget how morbid things felt at times because there was such expectation on us to deliver and things just weren't working. The team just didn't gel properly. It's because we had loads of new faces in primarily, but Paul Mullin was he just wasn't the same player he is now. He was having to drop so deep. He was getting so frustrated. Ollie Palmer came in and unlocked that. And Sam Dolby's a similar sort of player to me. He's someone who just has to do the dirty work, has to run the lines, has to drag defenders out of position, make the space for other people, hassle a centre-back, win knock-ons, head the ball down from corners, get some scruffy 6-yard box goals. That's what he can do. He's just lacking confidence. I think that's been the running theme for him. And he's always it's just not been a conducive environment to his development because he's always been behind Ollie Palmer. And then he's behind Ollie Palmer and Stephen Fletcher. And then you're only coming on in matches when either it doesn't matter or we desperately need a goal. So it's very difficult to make a positive impact on proceedings. Like he's either been sent into sort of be a firefighter, like everything's gone wrong, we need you to get a goal, which kind of indicates the team aren't playing well already. Or this game counts for nothing. You can score a hat-trick, you're not playing. There was that goal, he scored did he score 2 goals against Burton? Was it in the Papa John's last season, the Bristol Street Motors? He scored a wonder goal, didn't he? There was some Bristol Street Motors game where he scored a screen from outside the box. But that kind of counted for nothing. So I think he just needs that clean break. Very happy with the departures. Very excited by the arrival as well on deadline day.
Mo Faal then, 9 a.m. announcement. It kind of come out by then. A lot of West Brom sources had shared that. You're looking around a fee in the region of 500,000. Not declared a club record, which I still think Ollie Rathbone is the club record signing. But
wouldn't surprise me on that if it was a package worth $500,000. So it could be 200 or 300k up front, and then if Wrexham get promoted, you get another 100,000 or something. Or if he's in Team of the Year, get 50,000.
Well, Darren McAnthony was on TalkSport after we beat Peterborough, and he was saying that he'd had a conversation with Mike Williamson, and he said that Peterborough ranked second in spending in League One this summer, spending about 2.1 million. Birmingham top, spending about
85 billion, was it?
Yeah, 85 billion pounds, whatever. And he said that Wrexham were third, according to what he said to Mike Williamson, in that Wrexham had spent around 1.4 million over the summer, which would make you think that Faal and Rathbone are in the maybe 400s region to get you quite high. And then you're talking about smaller fee, Revan. What was Scar was an undisclosed fee as well, was it? So maybe a couple of 100,000 here or there, and it soon adds up. But really, for what is it, 8-9 arrivals, 1.4. I mean, it's dwarfed
So
by
good.
Birmingham, but still third in the third in the spending table, and also shows you that Peterborough's second in the spending table. You've just kind of wiped your hands of them. So let's not lose sight of how big a result that is as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think Faal is the perfect sort of indication of our new transfer sort of strategy as well, because we've been targeting, in the past, lots of more experienced strikers, and all summer we've been linked with even people like Will Keane and Humphreys, these more short-term solutions up front. Faal is not going to come in and be the finished article, but in 2 to 3 years he probably will be. He arrives arguably fourth, fifth choice striker just on merit, because you have to be behind Marriott and Palmer at the moment. You're behind Mullen because you're not going to be playing in front of him. Fletcher's still probably ahead of you because he's a proven option off the bench, whereas you're not. So you could say Fowler as a fourth or fifth choice. Wouldn't surprise me if by the end of the season he's in the top 3. He just looks so exciting. If you look at, there was a really good thread. I think it was, I can't remember who it was from. Sorry, there was a really good Twitter thread. Someone had broken down at the start of the summer the type of striker they wanted us to sign to partner Paul Mullin. It's a Wrexham account on social, so I'm not plugging properly here, but they've only got a few thousand followers, but their content's really good. And they broke down the sort of profile of player, and Faal was coming out in lots of the different metrics. He just looks like he's got a lot of the raw attributes required to be that proper partner for Mullin or another mobile striker in the years ahead. He's got good pedigree coming from West Brom. He's got Football League experience. I think he got 13 goals in League Two last season. That was across spells with Doncaster and with Walsall. So he's got that experience. He's never played regular football at League One or higher. He's had a couple of games, I think 3 appearances for West Brom first team. He scored for them in the Carabao Cup early round this season as well. But there's still a lot to come from him. He's very raw. He needs a lot of educating maybe on how to make things work as a professional. He will get such priceless experience playing alongside Stephen Fletcher for a season.
I was going to say, there's nobody better than Stephen Fletcher. I was going to say, not even Cristiano, apparently.
No, exactly. And then he'll maybe learn the predatory stuff off people like Mullin and Marriott, just add that extra aspect to his game. And even off the centre backs, working alongside them, he'll know what they don't like. This is where I should be stood to get goal side of view. What does Arthur like? Where does Arthur want the ball? Because he'll know what the keeper's thinking then. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he develops. Like I said, I don't think we can expect too much from him straight away. It'll be sub appearances, and then maybe he'll start getting some starts towards the sort of Christmas period. But very exciting, and the type of player that I was worried we wouldn't sign this summer. I was worried we'd go for someone like a Will Keane, who is more of a short-term hit.
Well, Rich, I was going to say, hopefully Mo Faal is better on the pitch than he is off it playing FIFA, because Jacob Mendy shared a video of Faal getting beaten, I think it was about 8-9-1. So I'm sure his FIFA skills will... but Jacob Mendy as well be a really key player in the squad for him to kind of help him bed in. He is a young lad that's, going to try and be finding his way at a new club, and that's, not easy. We spoke last week about Michael Smith not going on that Grimsby trip with Sheffield Wednesday while he was trying to figure out his future, and ended up staying there because of just the uncertainty around it all. And that is tricky for players. But he is a big guy, 6'5". He looked big in the warm-up, looked big. And, when you look at the striking department, Rich, and we talk a lot about it, and we'll talk a lot about it next summer as well, but Ollie Palmer, Jack Marriott, Stephen Fletcher, all out of contract in 2025. Sam Dolby out of contract in 2025, but he's now a non-factor because he's with Dundee United for the season. Billy Waters out of contract in 2025. He's at least away until January. Then you would imagine either another loan or a buyout or whatever the case may be. Jake Bickerstaff, I think, is 2026 maybe. Faal and Mullin both there till 2027. So if you're looking at it, you would think that has to be, in one sense, in the mind of the management team, a partnership that could work. Mullin and Faal, that Mullin and Mo, that could work up top. They are very different in terms of Faal. He's very big, but looks mobile. I wouldn't say he's super pacey. I mean, there was a guy that was warming up for Peterborough, and genuinely, I blinked, and he was one end of the warm-up area, and then he was at the other. It was just, he was zipping. It was like Who's that cartoon? Speedy Gonzales. He
Roadrunner.
was like that Roadrunner. Yeah, any of those, you can take your pick. So yeah, I wouldn't say he's got that blistering pace, but he does look mobile. And I think the key will be using Stephen
London
Fletcher.
Roadrunner should have been, shouldn't it? Really, actually,
using Stephen Fletcher just for the kind of the reading of the game, positioning, like we said about Ollie Palmer last week, and maybe using Ollie Palmer's experience for the physicality. If he is going to put on a bit more muscle, a bit more timber, Ollie Palmer carries that really well and is looking lean, but also looking a real physical presence that can bother. So if I'm Faal, I wouldn't worry so much about being a starter straight away, but I think use these next few months. I'm sure he'll play a lot of games anyway, but use these next few months to soak up as much information from players that have played, for well over a decade, and add it to your game.
Nath, got an email this week from Rob Taylor, who emailed in and said, "Hi guys, do you think there's a real risk of a higher club coming in for Parky at some point? Look at his current form, his player selection, and how he bonds a team. 2 promotions in 2 years, could be 3 this season. Heads are turning, and it can't be ignored. Do you think this is a problem?" That's from Rob Taylor. Now, I think to Parky's detriment, but to our advantage, I just don't think Parky gets the credit outside of North Wales. Basically, I just don't. I think everyone thinks, one, he's got a load of money, so it's an easy job, no credit there. And loads of people seem to think, Jurassic Parkinson, he's a dinosaur who only plays 3-5-2, knocks it long. Sutty's been on before and said, look, he never knew him to play 3-5-2 before he came to Wrexham. He's just using what he's got. Like we said, the way he plays football isn't just lump it long. I just feel there's loads of lazy stereotypes used against Phil Parkinson now. I was very sceptical of him at first. I really didn't enjoy the first 6 months. I had even spoken to lots of fans, referencing some of you Manchester Reds. You might remember this on the way back, I think, from Halifax, who said even if we got promoted, we should get rid of him. There's 1 or 2 who said that. But now, 3 years on, or 3rd season on. Is it 4th season? 3rd season, isn't it? Yeah. Sorry. I was getting my years and my seasons mixed up there.
Well,
we just know exactly.
4th season now?
Yeah. So 3 seasons on, yeah.
Sorry, 3 seasons on, yes, I count.
It's really interesting to see, this reception from him is still the same. He's still, even after these achievements, doesn't seem to get the credit externally.
So Rob was asking whether a championship club would come in for Phil Parkinson. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think it's set in stone. I think somewhere in the EFL gods has decided that Phil Parkinson doesn't play good football, is a dinosaur of a manager, isn't a good fit for their club. And that's great for us because I don't think he's going to get poached. I don't think anyone is going to come in for him. I think if a championship club hired him, you would probably get a lot of people saying, "Oh, that's a really uninspiring appointment. That's really rubbish." I saw Blackpool appointed Steve Bruce, and that was met with just utter fume from Blackpool fans saying, "Right, well, we're going down. That's it. We're going down." And Steve Bruce kept Newcastle up when I know he wasn't popular at all there, but there's certain managers just have this reputation of being utter rubbish, basically. And I would argue that Phil Parkinson has transformed Wrexham into this ruthlessly efficient team. That's the word I would use: efficient and effective. Those are the kind of buzzwords I also feel he's got this
reputation that people think he's like 80 years old. He's 56. Pep's 53. He's really? Sort of in his prime as the manager. Do you know what I mean? Parky's 3 years older than Pep Guardiola, but I think he's got this reputation that he's like a Stephen Warnock. Or like a Steve. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
I think people just think
Neil Warnock. I don't know about Stephen Warnock.
Sorry, Stephen Warnock. Yeah.
Stephen, that's an insult to Phil Parkinson. You take that back. He's better than Stephen Warnock. But I know what you mean. He's kind of got this like. He's been around forever. I know what you memean.
Yeah, I think lots of people think he's just this old school proper spit and sawdust sort of gaffer. I think I also think he wouldn't want to leave. I obviously, if a Premier League team came in for him, then the actual logistics of that, of course, you got to take the job.
It's not happening, though, is it? It's not happening.
Yeah, that's not happening. But I don't think even if a lower end Championship team came in for him, I don't think he'd want to end this project now. I think when he leaves Wrexham, it will hopefully be on his terms. He feels he's come to the end of his journey, but Why would you want to take over a championship team who are probably, given the circumstance of why they'd be hiring a manager, off to a bad start in a season? He wouldn't be able to put his implement on the team straight away, wouldn't be able to buy players, might have tactical expectations from the board, might not have the same freedom he has now, because obviously, it's well documented at Wrexham that when he was appointed, he was kind of given a bit of free rein to do what he wanted, to get all the players he wanted, to get the staff in he wanted. You wouldn't have that at another club. So as much as I don't think another team would go for him, I also don't think he'd go for another team. I think Parky is Wrexham, Wrexham are Parky, and he's here to stay. Good question though, Rob. Again, you can get emails to us, RobRyanRed@gmail.com. We read them all, but we don't read them all out just because we do get so many. But thank you so much for that one, Rob. This weekend then, Nath, Derby Day, slops again. We were the underdogs last time we faced them in the FA Cup earlier this year. Now we're the favourites. And just as we used underdog advantage to our favour, it's going to be really interesting because on Derby Day, everything goes out the window. We've been the underdogs on Derby Days many a time. Now we go in with, the scalp on our back, and you only have to look back to Tranmere last season, where their whole season basically was geared up to let's beat Wrexham at the racecourse. And they did that. They did a job on us, stopped us playing, deservedly won, but we still went and got promoted. They're still in League Two. Shrewsbury, do you want your opinion now before we get our expert insight?
Yeah, I will say very quickly, what was Shrewsbury's result? They beat Leyton Orient, didn't they? I think 3-0 with about 29% possession. Our last win against Red at home was 3-0 against Reading with about 33% possession. So I don't know who's going to have the ball. Somebody's going to have it, or it's just going to be floating around and we're both just going to stand off and kind of charge it all at the same time. But somebody's going to have the ball. All the expectation is on us. We can go top of the table if we win, which makes me more nervous than I should be. I still think, with the quality we've got, and you know what I think about us as well? I think we've played well. I just think we can play even better. And I think we've been really, really efficient and clinical, but I think there are spells where we can play even better. We should have put Peterborough, even further behind, really. Mullin, you mentioned there were other chances. Tom O'Connor hit the bar. I'm looking at Fletcher still hasn't had one of his breakout games yet. I think he's got one of them in him soon. Mullin hasn't come back into the fold properly yet. He's just had little fits and starts. Palmer's looking great at the minute. Marriott's looking good. Barney, Revan, there's so many elements that that haven't actually brought. We haven't seen any of Lewis Brunt, we haven't seen any of Dan Scarr so far. Mendy's going to come back into the mix soon. Mendy was actually in the away end with some of his friends, a few rows behind us, and he was enjoying it. I would say. I think Lewis Brunt might have even been with him in the away end. But I think we can go to another level, and I hope that level comes against the Slops this weekend.
Yeah, I think for me, there's twofold on this. Is I'm so emotionally scarred from the National League days of every time it felt like we could go top of the league, we wouldn't go top. But we've done it so many times now. The players are so experienced of winning these big games and getting a result when they have to, that is starting to ease now. Because, again, it is so hard to completely push that to one side when that's all you've grown up on is disappointment and watching us miss these opportunities. But there's reason to believe now. We've done it time and time again. Here is the preview. It's from Shropshire Live reporter Dan Stacey, who's been covering Shrewsbury in the first few weeks of the season. He also supports another League One team, which we get onto. We get his verdict on League One in general. Here's our chat with Dan Stacey. So, Dan, thanks for joining us on RobRyanRed. Wrexham versus Shrewsbury this weekend, then. It's a very hotly anticipated match, about as big as they come for Wrexham supporters and for Solops fans as well. What's the mood like in Shropshire ahead of this one? Because obviously the FA Cup meeting last season is still fresh in the memory. That's when Shrewsbury had the league advantage over us and were favourites to win the game, probably. Now they maybe even go in this weekend as considerable underdogs.
I definitely agree that they go in as underdogs. I mean, the mood around Shrewsbury and the club in general at the minute is probably better than it was this time last week for sure. Obviously off the back of the win against Leyton Orient, but I think there's still a big sort of understanding that this is going to be a hell of a tough season for them. It's the kind of League One where obviously we've seen Stockport come up and fly immediately. Crawley had a good start even, and then it goes without saying Birmingham who came down, and Huddersfield, Bolton, Charlton. I mean, could literally list probably 12 clubs that will have aspirations of playoffs minimum, maybe even automatic promotion. And Town are sort of probably one of a handful of clubs who would consider a good season being finishing 20th and not going down. It's going to be a tough year for them. Obviously, the win against Leyton Orient has definitely improved the mood, which was pretty much on the floor after the beginning of the season. They'd lost their first 3 games. They got knocked out of the EFL Cup. They lost in the EFL Trophy, or the Bristol Street Trophy, whatever you call it. So, yeah, it's going into Derby Day, like you say. There's some much needed optimism. It couldn't have come at a better time for them, really.
What was the match like against Leyton Orient then? Because any win is important. To win by 3 goals and keep a clean sheet as well is a real confidence boost. But the caveat is it's against Leyton Orient, who are in an even worse state maybe than Shrewsbury at the moment. So
yeah,
fans won't be getting carried away, will they? But was it a performance which Shrewsbury were clearly the better team, or was the scoreline flattering? I mean, most of us won't have watched it, I don't think.
Yeah, so I mean, you might look at the stats and see Leyton Orient have about 73, 74% possession and think, right, they were just hammering on the door all afternoon long, and Shrewsbury sort of basically got lucky. But it was very much the opposite, actually. It was very much a case of Leyton Orient passing the ball, sort of centre back to centre back, goalkeeper to right back to centre back, just back and forth, not harming Shrewsbury at all. Shrewsbury getting on the ball and being direct, quick, getting the ball forward to their really impressive sort of lone players up front, and just making Leyton Orient pay, in fairness. I mean, there weren't many shots in the game for either team. What I would say is that Shrewsbury, pretty much for the first time, it feels like under Paul Hurst, were clinical. They really made it count. They created, not only did they create sort of opportunities, they've done that fairly well, but they've created goal scoring opportunities, clear cut opportunities. The first goal is a brilliant sort of pass from the right winger Tommy O'Reilly through to his fellow loanee Leo Castledine, and it's a one-on-one situation which you'd back anyone to score. Obviously, the second one, if Wrexham fans haven't seen it, I know it's a Shrewsbury player who scored it, but it's an absolute worldie from Tom Bloxham. And then the third's another one where they've got him through one-on-one. So, yeah, it's a case of, well, the Orient game especially was a case of Shrewsbury creating good chances and taking them, whereas in games that have gone by, they've maybe had more shots perhaps, but they've been from range, from free kicks, corners, that kind of thing. And yeah, it was a game that they definitely deserved to win. They weren't dominant. It wasn't like a game that you came off and like, oh wow, what a great performance from every single player. But when it mattered, they did well, and that's really all that you can do at League One level, because at the end of the day, it's 3 points, 3 goals. That's really what everyone will care about come May.
And looking ahead to this weekend, then obviously the fact it's a derby encounter just throws that spanner into the works. Wrexham fans, like we said, we were the underdogs last season. It was a free hit in the FA Cup. We obviously really did want to win it. It was a horrible match, really low on quality. Shrewsbury will be looking to probably do the same this weekend. Roles reversed, really make it a gritty, nasty affair. Who are the danger men? Who should Wrexham be wary of this weekend?
Well, in terms of difference from last season, they've got a couple of loanees. I just mentioned actually Tommy O'Reilly and Leo Castledine. O'Reilly is a young winger on loan from Aston Villa, obviously local-ish club, and he looks like a star. In fairness, he comes in off the right wing and can do a bit of everything really. I mean, he's probably best when he's running at pace with the ball, sort of getting down the line and crossing it, obviously, which is a fairly big part of how Shrewsbury play, not too dissimilar to yourselves. But he also has the ability to come inside and play really incisive passes, which is how he got an assist on Saturday against Orient, and that was for Castledine, who is the son of the former Premier League striker Stuart Castledine, I believe. So it's sort of a case of, he's always going to be a bit of a goal scorer by sort of hereditary, really. And he proved that on Saturday he basically had one chance in the game and took it absolutely perfectly. So those two you'll definitely have to watch out for. Obviously, in midfield there'll be sort of Jordan Shipley, who's always going to be a good player in League One. They may or may not be without Carl Winchester. I know Paul Hurst said to me after the game that it was sort of touch and go whether he'd be involved. It'd basically be a decision made in training this week. So if he misses out, he'll be a big miss. And the same goes really for Jordan Roster as well as a midfielder they're going to be without, which is obviously I look at the Wrexham midfield and the sort of quality and more the tenacity that you've got in there. And those two, you sort of, if you're a Shrewsbury fan, you'd be desperate for those to play. And if they don't play, a lot of your listeners will be very happy, I imagine.
We'll get you onto maybe a prediction for the game then. I want to touch on League One in general after this as well, because there's another link which we'll let listeners hear about in a second to League One with yourself. What are you expecting this weekend then, from a Shrewsbury perspective? Do you think it is going to be damage limitations, or it's a derby day? You should never rule anything out, should you?
No, I wouldn't say damage limitation, because Paul Hurst has been at Shrewsbury long enough, obviously this spell and his one before, to know that basically 2 or 3 games that Shrewsbury care about in the calendar, and obviously now that Wrexham have been added to that calendar, that immediately becomes the big one. Just like probably for yourself. So it's going to be a case of building on what they did well on Saturday, creating those good opportunities and taking them, more importantly, being hard to sort of break down, hard to score against. And yeah, I'm obviously I've got to come from the Shrewsbury point of view here, but I do think Wrexham, as we sort of touched on earlier, are the stronger side, favourites at home. I know you've got a good record at home. Started the season in really good form, so I can see Wrexham scoring, but I do think this confidence that the Shrewsbury side will have taken from that game, and more importantly, the sort of the know-how of how to play against teams that maybe are a bit more similar to them. I feel like Shrewsbury, we saw against Peterborough, a side that came and really wanted to play, quick football on the floor, that kind of thing. Maybe less physical sides, Shrewsbury actually struggle more against, because they can't impose themselves on them. Whereas against Wrexham, I feel like it'll be a bit more of a battle, and that suits a lot more of Shrewsbury players. So I think a 1-1 draw I'm going to go for, and I think in fairness, a lot of Town fans would be happy with that.
So we mentioned you've also got another League One link then, Dan. You're on the fan advisory board at Wigan Athletic. What have you made of League One the last few seasons? I mean, we've got James McLean from you. We've been linked with numerous Latics players as well, haven't we, in recent years?
Yeah.
And the summer just been as well. We were linked with Humphreys almost non-stop before we moved for Mo Faal on deadline day. As a Wigan supporter, how do you look at League One this season? Are you surprised? Who stands out for you as the strongest teams?
Yeah, I am a Wigan supporter, which is probably why I haven't predicted a Shrewsbury win, because if you'd got a Shrewsbury fan on there, I imagine they'd have been coming on with the big old, we're going to do you 3-0. But maybe I can be a bit more reasoned. But in terms of League One, as a Wigan fan, we've just come off the back of playing Birmingham, which was an experience to say the least. There, obviously, we played them at St Andrews, and it was an unbelievable atmosphere. They've got obviously a League One super team that they're kind of building out there, really, and we unfortunately conceded a last-minute goal to lose. I'm sure people have seen the bloody limbs all over social media of that last-minute Birmingham goal, so won't have to touch on that. But yeah, League One's very tough. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, there are probably 12 teams that are seeing playoffs as a genuine ambition. I would say we're probably one of them, but towards the lower end of the sort of realistic scale, if you know what I mean. We're still very much building a young squad off the back of our sort of financial troubles. So it's a tough league. Obviously, Wrexham coming up. I love James McLean so much. He's an absolute legend. Every time, I'm just happy that Wrexham are doing well, because he's doing well. Obviously, he's just well, everyone hates him, doesn't he? Apart from your fans and our fans, it seems.
Yeah, if he plays for you, love him, don't you? If he plays against you, he's the worst person in the world. But we love him as well. It's going to be interesting, because obviously this isn't a Wrexham a Wigan preview. We don't play until December, but it's interesting because we've been warned. Whenever we get guests on, we speak to them about League One. What do we expect? Are we being too naive, thinking we might be able to go again? But we're quite giddy right now. It's a long old season, isn't it? I mean, how has it been for Wigan being back in League One?
Yeah, well, obviously we came down under a bit of a cloud. financially, off the pitch, so many issues. And it was kind of just linking it back to Shrewsbury. We kind of had to look at the Shrewsbury model or the Peterborough model of, right, just get yourself sustainable and stay in League One and just build slowly but surely. Obviously, it's a sort of method that quite a lot of teams have had success with. I know back in 2017-18 when Paul Hurst was at Shrewsbury, they almost got promoted to the Championship off the back of it. And it's the kind of thing that, yeah, we've sort of eventually, we're no longer the big spenders in the league, so we have had to draw it back to that kind of sustainable model, really. And it's an interesting league again because yourselves and Stockport have come up from League Two and are maybe buying players ahead of sort of seasoned League One clubs, if you like, and that's why it's not only is it harsh for Wigan, who, I mean, we were lucky enough to sell one of our players for around 4 million plus in the summer. You can only then imagine how hard it is for the likes of Cambridge or Shrewsbury, who are sort of not surviving day to day, but they don't necessarily have that security in the background, and it's why it makes it a really interesting league, in fairness, and more importantly, an incredibly competitive league.
So, Nath, yeah, Shrewsbury have got their first win of the season, 3-0 and a clean sheet. It's always easy for us to make a case for Wrexham to drop points, but what are you thinking this weekend?
I'm positive. I think you have to, I've kind of got this like little mini Rich Fay in my brain that's saying, which is awful, but I mean, I've got this like mini you in my brain that's saying, it's so early, like don't get carried away. But you know what? When I was at Peterborough and everyone was getting super carried away, I felt like you have to sort of celebrate the wins and allow yourself to feel the highs because before you know it, it'll be December and we might have lost 3 on the bounce and we'll have to be coming on here talking about those. So I'm feeling super positive at the minute. We look good. We look a real contender, as I said last week. I think for that second spot, I think we're in that mix of maybe 7 or 8 teams that will believe they can get that. Huddersfield, Charlton. Who else is going to be in there? Barnsley, maybe. Now they've got Davis Keeler done. Bolton when they ever figure it out, although I still think they're absolutely naff. There'll be a load of teams in there that think we can get a Stockport and ourselves. And I think we'll have enough. I think the atmosphere will be really, really good. I know Shrewsbury fans are getting the rocking chair as a designated away pub. So if you normally drink in there, that will not be one for you on Saturday. I actually think their first opening win helps us. Because I feel like had they gone into it winless, then I would have probably been the gallows humour of they're bound to win. But them winning and losing, is it Luca Hull, the young Welsh lad at centre back who's he's been called up for Wales under 21s, which is bad news for them because I don't think they have I think he's been playing right back for them and I don't think they have any other right backs, so that's a real positive for us. And I just think we've got so many competition for places has been a blessing and not a curse for Wrexham so far. Might not say the same all season, but I think we've got players operating at such a high level now because you know that if Andy Cannon dips, you've got Ollie Rathbone that can come in. George Evans is a fabulous player. We know how much you love Gorgeous George, but Dobson is playing at an elite level. Elliot Lee's playing fabulous football, home and away. Ollie Palmer's playing great Marriott, but you've got Mullin, you've got Faal. Hopefully we maybe see Faal come on. Will we see 3 strikers on the bench again? Dan Scarr, he's got a point to prove and wants to come in and play. So what that is doing is just driving the standard sky high. And I'm going to say Wrexham will win.
5 seems to be the number of the week, doesn't it?
I was actually going to say Wrexham would win 4-1. I was going to say. So 5 goals in total, 4-1.
If you're asking negative me, I'm saying a 2-1 win. If you're asking giddy me, it's 5-0. Yeah. Stop the count. We will see anyway. We'll be back on next week's show to look back on that. Nath, we've also got Bristol Street Motors coming up. Like we said, that's going to be interesting. Fantasy football as well. I'm not sure when the deadline is. That for Saturday? There's not many games this weekend because of the international break.
No.
I don't think there is a Friday night game this week. I think the deadline is on Saturday morning. Yeah. How are you feeling about it all?
Fantasy, well, let's do fantasy football. I'll share my screen for those that are watching. Fantasy football, I had an absolute nightmare, but it didn't spoil my day. So that's my team for next week. But let's look. Rich, I scored less points than you, and you aren't even trying. You aren't even trying, and I scored less points
that's
than you.
The ultimate insult, mate.
That was so bad. I mean, look, you can see I went all in on West Brom to beat Swans and keep a clean sheet. Keeper got me 6. Josh Madger got me 10. Fine. For some reason, Jatta, I didn't check whether he was playing. He didn't even play. Sunderland defender didn't even play. Dan Crowley did absolutely nothing. Burnley, I don't know what's happened to Burnley. The wheels kind of seem to be coming off there, Rich. A lot of talk around Scott Parker, and they've sold all these players.
4 games in and the wheels have come off. That's a record, isn't it? Bolton and Burnley's wheels have come off.
No, but Burnley, all I see on Twitter is Burnley fans are really panicking about the season and whether Scott Parker might walk away, and doesn't seem to be all well there. Lincoln did get a clean sheet, so that got me 7 points with O'Connor. And then I picked Bromley, who lost in the last minute against Crewe, I think. So that got me 0. They got me 0 points. And Bolton, this great Bolton team, apparently, they lost at home to Exeter. So they got me 0 points. I got a total of 29 points, Rich, and you got 32, which means
Who's on manager of the week?
Well, I dropped to 222nd out of 400. There's still players joining every week, which is great, by the way. Manager of the week was G. Jones with Fleetwood Jimmy Mack, 89 points. Luke Molyneux, 38 points as captain. Alfie May up top, 7 points. Luke 09 in midfield for Sunderland. Junior Firpo got 13 points for Leeds. Bryant Belongo for Bristol Rovers got 10. And I used that in goal. Lee Nichols for Huddersfield got 3. Emmanuel Latelap 1. Huddersfield and Doncaster as their team's got 9 points total. So yeah, 89 points. And the overall leader so far is Roy Kiffin, based in the Midlands. He had George Dobson as his captain last week, Rich. 24 points for George Dobson. Arthur Okonkwo proving a very good pick. So I'm ranked 226th. I've also got this little spreadsheet here. You are 363rd out of 412 players now. So
I'll take it. There's a long way to go. I've been saying that for a while.
Look, you might be like Bolton, Rich, whereby I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but you might be like Bolton, whereby actually before I stop sharing my screen, I'm going to tell you who I've got for this week to kind of turn it around, and who I picked. So these are the players that I've got for this coming week. Jack Marriott, I just think, Rich, he's going to start again. He deserves to start. You can't drop him in this form. I know there might be the temptation to throw Mullen in, but I still think you ease Mullen back in. Marriott's playing well.
You're giving away your secrets now, though, aren't you?
I'm just going to show you that. Well, I mean, I'm 263rd. If the 262 players want advice, I don't think they're coming to me, Rich. I think, and then they're not coming to either of us. This trophy, if anyone has forgotten, is not going to be coming to me. The RobRyanRed 10 Cup. I'm going to hold it now because I'm not going to hold it at the end of the season, clearly, because it's going badly wrong. But I'm going to go with Ryan Barnett, who I think, like you said, Rich, has made a case to be one of Wrexham's best players this season. Jack Marriott, Luke O'Connell for Barnsley, even though we don't know how Davis Keeler-Dunn is settling in there. Jody Jones as my captain. I don't know. Have I just got a bias against Accrington Stanley since the whole fiasco last season? Maybe. Mickey Dimitru, Theo Vassell, and Charlton goalkeeper Will Mannion in goal. And just for National League heritage, I've got Wrexham to win and Notts County to win. Are you banking on any Wrexham players to get you back on track?
I am, but I would never dare tell those people below me who I'm going for, because we've got a reputation to upkeep. So yeah, we will see. Again, every week we'll bring you our fantasy football until I get very bored of it and I cut the feature for good. Let us know if you're taking part in the fantasy football as well and how you're getting on. Nath, lastly then, before we go, Salford, Bristol Street Motors next week. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? I mean, the Shrewsbury team, you would say, is going to be basically the same. It'd be hard to make a case. Maybe, just being pedantic, you could put Revan in instead of... It'd be very hard to drop Barney, or definitely not McLean, so I can't see any changes.
I've just told you I've put Barney in my fantasy team, and now you're speaking into existence the idea of dropping Barney. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Why?
So, the team against Salford, we could have a very different looking Wrexham team, but a very strong one, couldn't we? You could have Faal and Mullen up top. You could have George Evans in midfield with Rathbone. You could have Scar in defence. You could have Revan starting.
There's certain rules, isn't there? You've got to have certain people that were in the previous matchday squad. Not necessarily starting, but I think it's like 5 or 6 that had to be in the squad previously.
Which is very doable, isn't it?
I think so.
You basically all the subs start, and then you put some of the 2 of the starters on the bench.
I wouldn't be surprised, just off the top of my head now, in that Salford game, you have Callum Burton in goal. You have a back 3 of Aaron James, Lewis Brunt, and Dan Scarr, with Revan and Mendy as the fullbacks. Potentially, you could have Ford in there as well if you wanted, but
Luke Bolton.
yeah, potentially as well. I think I'll go Revan and Mendy, which is pure pace. I then think a midfield trio of Rathbone, if he's fit enough, Evans, and who else can I put in there? I think he might still pick like an Andy Cannon or an Elliot Lee. He might pick one of those, I think, in there. And then Faal and Mullin up top, which I just think is a team that you could put out in the league, and I don't think people would be too upset by.
You could even see Josh Adams in midfield. Who knows?
So what's going on with that? What have you been hearing about Josh Adam? Because he's been training with Wrexham now for
10 days.
Yeah. And
there's been lots of. I mean, by the time we've put a podcast out, he's probably already a Wrexham player, so maybe we shouldn't linger on it too much. But I mean, he's obviously looking for a club. Training with Wrexham would be a free hit at this stage because he doesn't count in the registered squad because he's under the sort of age limit. He'd be an addition, wouldn't he? He would give you an extra body in the attacking midfield role. I guess it's just whether Parky, if there's a bit of budget left, do you put it on someone like him who might not have much of a role this coming season, or do you keep it, further in case another problem position arrives?
We need the Josh Adam sightings though. Is he at the games? Is he at the ground? Where is he? That's what we need.
Well, there's lots of spurious rumours, aren't there? There was one rumour today in the Manchester Reds chat we recorded on Wednesday that he was in the club shop getting his shirt fitted. Which, if he's been training for 10 days, you'd say surely he knows his shirt size by now. But
you'd hope so. Maybe it's a long sleeve shirt. They just want to get the measurements because they're on sale now. So no, I feel like I would have got one. I've already bought one. Yeah.
That's the problem. If they would have told us when they were on sale initially there would be long sleeve versions, I would have held off for a long sleeve version. But we're not made of money on this podcast unless you want to donate. But no, you don't have to donate for me to get a long sleeve shirt. But we will see. We'll be back next week to look back on 2 games. I won't be here. You'll be here with a special guest, and then it's Birmingham away. You'll be in a good mood if you get tickets for St Andrews. You could be in a very somber mood if you don't. But we'll be back to see what happens next week. As always, a massive thank you to Red 10 People Development for their continued support of the podcast, and to Wrexham-based band Hypnotic for letting us use the music, the stings, and those new sort of, we call them tiles, transitions, if you're watching on YouTube.
Whatever you want to call them, mate. You're going to swan off. You're going to swan off into the sunset, enjoy a nice break. So you can call it whatever you want, and I'll have to pick up the mess next week if it's not right.
That sounds good to me. Right, take care. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again next time.
The Wrexham AFC podcast with Nathan Salt and Rich Bay.